Welcome to another episode of the Haskin Cast podcast, episode 322. And this weekend, actually on this bonus episode, I'm very excited to bring back our third-time returning champion, Jim Meskimen. Jim, how are you?
I'm good, Scott. How are you? Thanks for having me back a third time. I can't believe it.
It's my pleasure. Well, the last two, the first two were like bang, bang. Like I had you on the show and then you just like exploded on TikTok and Harlan's like, hey, can you have him back on? I'm like, of course I can. You know, why wouldn't I? And then you're back with another new program. It seems like you've always got at least 5 or 6 projects going on, including your YouTube channel, but then projects that you are working on, audiobooks. Your life seems to be pretty packed.
It is. And this year in particular, there's just a lot of stuff that had been kind of backlogged during the pandemic. I think that wasn't released or wasn't finished. That, it's been one thing every other week that I did a while ago that, from audiobooks, as you mentioned. I've got a big video game release that's happening. I can't talk about it yet, but next week I can. And the TV shows. So yeah, it's just one of those busy periods where I planted a lot of seeds and now it's harvest time.
Right. Well, I'll wait for the email for Harlan on the video game, but congratulations. I think the pandemic really just kind of set everything in a strange bubble because for a while nobody could act. So everybody was writing. And then as soon as they could act, then it was an explosion of producing. Then it was, okay, now editors and dialogue people and sound design and composers are backed up. Then that bubble moves on to the next thing, which is then releasing them in DVD pressings, and record pressings are behind a year because of it. Book pressings are very similar because there was no one at the plants to be doing anything. So now, of course, all that stuff is just going to now explode into it's being released. And now everybody's like, okay, now I've got 10 things I've been waiting to see, and they all hit at the same time.
Yeah. It puts a lot of pressure on the consumer for sure.
It does. At least though, there's some things you can kind of control, like how quickly you produce an audiobook, for example, or, if you're doing voiceovers for video games or cartoons or something like that, you can control that to an extent because most of that's done remote anyway.
That's correct. Yeah, there's tons of stuff that I just do in the back room and in my sound studio. In fact, I just finished an audiobook project that I really like a lot that my whole family was part of. My wife and my daughter, we all participated in an anthology of science fiction and fantasy short stories that were the top stories for this international competition, the L. Ron Hubbard Writers and Illustrators of the Future contest. Wow. Every year they have it's the 39th year. And it's an amazing contest. And we got to read and do the first audiobook of that yearly anthology. So that's going to get released also like next week or later this week, I think. And
wow.
It was very exciting. A lot of fun to do.
Congratulations. That's a great project. And of course, I remember even, growing up in the 80s, the name L. Ron Hubbard seemed to be everywhere when Dianetics came out and just kind of took the world by storm. So that's a very cool project. That's just it, though. I mean, when you're working on your own, do you get directed? Do they like over the phone or anything direct you, or are they just like, what you're doing? If we don't like it, we'll tell you and you can do it again?
Yeah, it's pretty rare. I at this point I've done, I don't know, over 200 books, and I guess I'm kind of a known and trusted entity. So sure. I fancy that people do. I do audition, and they do give me a note there, like this is the kind of thing we're looking for. And, the audition will be about the 3-minute section of the book. And I figure then they get a sort of a flavor of how I will treat certain things. And then they either like what I did or they don't. They'll hire somebody else.
I would imagine if you get really any direction at all, it would be more along the lines of, this is how we're picturing this character. This is how we want them to sound. Could you be a little gruffer with this old man voice, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Or often it's a book that's like a nonfiction title that's been written by an author who probably would have read it himself, except he's usually discouraged from doing that by the publishers who want a more polished kind of delivery. And it is harder than it looks. So often I will be called upon to try to evoke a little bit who what that author sounds like, and not do a full-on impression of him necessarily,
sure.
But to kind of, bridge the gap a little bit, straddle the line.
It'll be fun when you read Schwarzenegger's book.
Yeah, that's right. I did a Tom Petty book one time. I did Tom Petty, so I did the whole book kind of like this.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's all about interviews with Tom Petty. And I don't know how well I did, but it was
That would be a
a
hard
salute
one.
to Tom Petty. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm really excited about your newest project. It is called the Big Door Prize, showing now I have it down as Apple TV, but I see it's Apple TV Plus. Is
Apple TV.
Plus the subscription version of Apple TV?
I believe that's so. I believe that's so. Apple TV Plus, or as they say in France, Apple TV Plus.
That's very good. It's hard to adjust from speaking from the front of your mouth to the back of your mouth to get that French accent.
It is. It's tough. You could sprain your tongue.
I've sprained tongues. They weren't always mine, but pulled a groin muscle once playing hockey. That wasn't mine either.
Oh,
Uh, what now? I saw the trailer. I've got the link to the trailer in the show notes. This looks like a really interesting concept, but I've only seen the one trailer, so I'm not sure that I understand the depth of it. Could you explain it to me?
sure. It's a fantasy comedy, I think. It is it really exists in its own universe, but it takes place in a small town, and a there's a teacher who is there, a married teacher. He's played by Chris O'Dowd, the wonderful, charming Irish actor, and this what's called a morpho machine. It's a fortune telling machine, but very high tech, electronic. Suddenly appears in their local little grocery store, their little market, and it purports to tell people their destiny. It spits out a little blue card, and with usually one or two words on it, and it affects the people in this town in a very interesting way. It's an indication of what maybe they always thought they should have done, or they had no idea that was the path they should go in. Mm-hmm. And the show explores, these questions of identity and destiny, and what should you be doing? What's the purpose of your life? Because if the all-knowing machine says, well, you really should be a dancer, or you really should be a motorcycle rider, do you just pick up everything in your life and shift it around or not? And we get to explore that. So it's a very funny show, but it's not an overt comedy. It's not like Friends or something like that that's fall down funny. It is a humorous show. One of the creators, David West Reed, is one of the people behind Schitt's Creek. So it has a really lovely sense of humor that's all its own. And what I think is its strength is it's an extremely original television show. You really never know where it's going to go from minute to minute, and it has a very interesting and eclectic group of characters. I get to play Chris O'Dowd's father, Kerry Hubbard, who is an accountant, but also gets this morpho card that tells him what he should be doing, his true purpose in life, which he embraces wholeheartedly, is to be a male model. And so that creates a lot of interesting stuff.
Is that an interesting one for you as an actor to cover? Because I mean, I don't know how much modeling you've done in your real life, but I think about actors having to go into a movie, and let's say that they're comfortable acting, but they're afraid of public speaking, and they have a role where they have to do a speech in front of an auditorium or something like that. And it really pushes them as an actor to do things that they wouldn't normally do.
Or ride a horse or scuba dive or something like that. Yeah. No, I have done zero modeling of any kind. So for me, it was definitely, reaching outside my boundaries. But, I'd been exercising a little bit during the pandemic, and they said when I was auditioning and finally got the role, they said, hey, you're in pretty good shape, but we will, if you'd like, we will hire you a trainer to get a little more fit and to be more male modeling. And I said, you bet. So I've been training now for over a year, which I really enjoy. And so I'm very comfortable, taking off my shirt or being in whatever costume that they give this character to wear. I feel like I'm, puffed up and really representing.
This should be interesting. I'm also comfortable taking off my shirt, providing all the lights are out in the room. I think I could have been a good Kmart model. Just could have done that.
Stand
but it's got to be fun to do something that's really different, and you really get to stretch, your physical role instead of just the voices.
It is, I in a kind of a funny way, I've been an actor for so long, and I've done so many roles where I'm just sitting, talking to someone across the table. And it started about 5 or 10 years ago. It started to really get to me. So I would like to stand. I would like to walk across the room. I'd like to do one of these shots that follow you down a hallway while you talk to somebody while you're holding a bunch of books and talking about legal things or military things. As you're walking, go around the corner and you talk to another. And subsequently, I've gotten to do those things. But most of my early career in film was sitting across the table from somebody talking. And like, I can act below the abdomen, and the knees can act, and the ankles. You want to be involved.
Well, and then on top of that, when you're doing all your voice recordings, you're sitting down, you're in a chair at a desk. So it's like, this is almost a great opportunity for you to just move around, for one.
And several of the episodes of the Big Door Prize, both season 1 and season 2, I don't really have any lines. I'm just modeling something or being a male model or dancing a little bit. And I like that too. I like not having any words to say.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to memorize those lines, but then it becomes all blocking and timing.
Yep. Yeah. All blocking, physical company, man.
We have to contact Sylvester Stallone and see if maybe he needs like a sparring partner for the next Rocky or something like that, where you can really use those workouts.
I'd be more likely to play the young Mickey.
Oh yeah, you know what? Meredith. I could actually see that.
I tell you what.
If they did a prequel, is Burgess one of the voices that you do by chance?
I've done Burgess Meredith's voice forever. When he was still alive in New York area, when I was there in the 80s, and people may not remember, but his voice was used quite often in commercials. Mm-hmm. He would say Honda, and he would do all kinds of voiceovers for things. And so cheaper companies that I was working with as I was starting out would want, and I would pitch them, hey, how about a Burgess Meredith read on this? And they'd go, oh, that would be great. And so I talk things about, any day now, there's going to come a time when the final reckoning will occur, whatever it happened to be. I'd put a little Burgess Meredith in there. And subsequently, I've just become a bigger and bigger fan of his. He really had an incredible body of work.
You really did. That was fantastic, by the way. I love how you just so naturally jump into these voices. But Burgess, as I really noticed this, I was actually watching Rocky III the other day. I often have things on while I'm doing like marketing and different things. And I was really listening to the inflections in his voice at the beginning when he's arguing with Rocky about not wanting to do the fight with Mr. T. And boy, he really had some inflections that were very unique.
Yeah. Well, he's a wonderful stage actor. So, I'm sure every take was different. I'm sure he brought richness to any role that he essayed, even those grumpy old men role towards the end of his life, where he was just that cranky old guy. I think there's probably a lot of variety in it. And he did, told this to somebody the other day, he did for me, like the definitive Waiting for Godot, which with Zero Mostel, that's on YouTube, that I discovered to my great pleasure once. And I don't know if you're a fan of that play as I am, I think he just hits it out of the park. I think it's like one of those things, like, that's the way you do that. That's that role. He was so good.
He knew how to read what was needed and just be colorful. Like not to the point where he pushed himself in front of people to get seen. He just knew how to be seen without being in front, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very amazing actor. I wanted to ask you, it's kind of a slightly off-topic question, but when you're putting together a sizzle reel, you've got such a body of work now. How do you narrow down what you want to show, or do you do different sizzle reels for different types of projects?
Yeah, these days they seem to like distinct clips from, like, single clips from shows, because then the casting director can go, oh, here's a courtroom scene. Okay. Oh, here's a doctor. Oh, here's a dramatic thing with a star. And they can just look at that rather than having to sit through 3 minutes of something where the thing I wanted was at the end, So that seems to be just a practical speed thing. And as casting has sped up and production has sped up, that's become the rule. But I did recently put together on for my IMDb page, a kind of a greatest hits of the last couple of years of really, really beefy, nice dramatic roles of these projects that we're talking about, so that people could get a taste of it pretty fast.
Did you have to do an in-person audition for the Big Door Prize?
No, I wasn't able to. They were casting it out of New York, I think, and or all over. more likely, Atlanta, and which is where we film it. And I don't know who all came from LA, but I know it was all done over this laptop, just like this.
Is it weird though to not have the energy of the room to be able to feel immersed in the audition when you're doing it remote?
Yeah, yeah, it is weird. I've sort of made my peace with it, and sometimes it's a little nervy going to a room full of strangers, and that energy you're talking about is like, you're trying desperately to read it and to be, I don't know, to make friends in a
Mhm.
nanosecond, and
Yeah.
the pressure is kind of nutty.
Mhm.
It's not a natural thing, so I take okay to the self taping. I don't mind, and I don't mind the callbacks via Zoom. Those are a little more irksome, but definitely I like the self taping because I can do it as often as I like until I get it to what as perfect as I want it, and then
Mhm.
I can send it off in the middle of the night or whatever, and they'll watch it at their leisure.
Yeah, it seems I'm very much an energy person, and of course I'm not an actor,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't go on auditions. I'm as a musician, I just send clips, so
Mm.
it's easy for me. But I would think it would be hard not to be in the room and feel the vibe and kind of be in that moment with them. Harder to connect if you're not. It would seem like, but if everybody's doing that, then you're all on equal playing ground.
Yeah, it's a pretty even playing field. But I know that the casting directors that I've talked to, most of them aren't very crazy about it because even though it's quicker for them to go, okay, delete, 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 or
Yeah.
shunt things around,
Mhm.
they don't have the opportunity to talk to the actor and to see what the actor is like as a person, how they
Right.
behave themselves, what are they like, really, because it's up to them to choose people who are going to be professional and I don't know, not be a pain in the rear end. And
Mhm.
so they I think would love to go back to the in-person auditions, and perhaps that'll happen now that the pandemic has been signed out of law.
Right. Right. Well, and it is tough because it isn't just about whether you gave a good read and had the right inflections. It's about, are you the kind of person who's going to show up? Are you the kind of person who's going to be difficult on set? Are we going to have, social media issues with you? There's so much more to it. And I think that's what you miss getting that feel for without that in-person connection.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Of course, you're all over social media. You've exploded all over TikTok. Now it's your Instagram that's growing. Do you feel when you're recording something new, like you're always putting stuff on YouTube? You've got the celebrity fortune cookie that you do every day, which I love. But do
Okay.
you feel a different sense when you're attacking it now of how many people are going to see it, or do you just go in and do it like you always did?
I'm trying to do things. Obviously, my daughter helps me a lot, and she's an actress and a voiceover person, and also manages my social media with me.
Mhm.
And we obviously we try to do. It's exciting when something is very popular. Often the thing you think is going to be a home run just lays there. But lately, yeah, we've been really fortunate, and I try to do something that I think is funny or entertaining, and
Mhm.
also that people like to see me change character very quickly to go from Patrick Stewart, for example, in a nanosecond to Matthew McConaughey and just sort
Mhm.
of, make that change. Robert De Niro could happen, it could hit you anytime. And Robin Williams, of course, it's great to see him pop up whenever he does. So I try to do material like that people enjoy seeing. I do. Also, we had a lot of success with God, we got 4 million views with this one where I just change accents while I am reading a manual of a electric drill that we bought. So you never really know. And it's creative. It's fun and it's an experiment. And when it
Mhm.
hits, you're like, oh, that's cool. Look at that. And look at all these friends we've made and people's bright, nice little comments and
Yeah.
hopefully building some sort of awareness for the show, for the Big Door Prize and for other projects that I'm on.
Well, and it seems like if you're doing things that are just honest, if you're scripted and it's obvious or you're trying to do something, it tends to come off that way. If you do it very naturally, like you're doing, where you're just in the moment, here's what it is, and that's what you capture and that's what you post. I think those are the things that are going to be enjoyed more. Interestingly, I have a friend who's in a band who is a pretty successful band, and he's gotten some decent hits on his music videos. But what his big success was a review of a lawnmower. Like,
Incredible.
where do you go with that? How do you even predict what's going to work? You just put it out there and it's either going to work or it isn't.
Well, and that has always been the case. Like I do a lot of things, but the impressions that I do have been the things that get me the most attention. So my life could have taken a completely different path, but I finally observed that the impressions were the things that people seem to find valuable, at least in the short term. So I've focused on that, and I've disciplined myself to always, revive my own interest and enthusiasm for the world of impressions.
Yeah, and you do a great job. I mean, it when I watch your stuff, it feels like you genuinely are doing it because you want to do it and not because I have to do a video today. I've never once felt that way in anything of yours that I've
Oh,
seen, and I love that.
thank you.
I
Thank you,
think
Scott.
that's the difference. I wanted to ask you too about Hunters, because we didn't get to talk about that last time. What can you tell me about that?
No. So Hunters, yeah, it was the final season of that Nazi hunting show that Jordan Peele was involved in as a producer, and Al Pacino was in it also. And I got to play this German judge at a tribunal in the trial of Adolf Hitler. Big
Wow.
presumed. This is a reimagining of what could have happened in the 70s,
Mhm.
and I really had I felt so happy to. It's another thing I auditioned for at home. The only thing I did with the audition was different. Was because I know this German character. I did a little bit of research, and I examined different people that were talking at Nuremberg, for example, and then on the audition tape, because I'm a little bit audio savvy, I realized my little room where I shoot these things doesn't have much space, not much echo. So I just put a little bit of echo on my audition, so that when I bang the gavel, it had a little space was created.
Oh yeah.
I think it's little things like that. I at least make me feel like I'm doing a little bit extra to sell this illusion, that I'm a judge in a courtroom.
But I think
And then
there's something
I got
more
to
to
work with
that.
some. Yeah, go
I'm sorry. I
ahead.
was just going to say, I think there's something more to that on the subconscious side of the people that are reviewing your audition, because it will be more alive and more realistic, and it's kind of like if you have your house painted when you have people over to see if they want to buy it or not, and they're envisioning your life versus painting the walls white and having them see what their life would be like. People always say, as a composer, don't send video clips, don't put your music to other people's stuff, just play the
Mm.
music and let them envision it with their film. And you're getting them to that point because you're giving them something to make it more alive. I love that you did that.
Yeah, yeah, I've done it a couple of times when I thought it would be appropriate, and yeah, so yeah, that's a very good comparison. That painting the house thing. Yeah, my mother used to always, whenever she'd have her house appraised, she would bake cookies so that the kitchen would be full of
Oh
this
yeah.
delicious evocative aroma. I don't know if it
Mhm.
made any difference at all, or if they jacked up the price of the house $30,000 because of that. I don't know.
Well, if nothing else, it
So
made them
anyway,
happy and hungry. Yeah.
yeah, it made them happy and hungry. That salivating, maybe a salivating appraiser is more likely to give you a better number. But Hunters was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. It was, and I think it turned out great. When I finally saw the episode, I was like, oh my God, it was like being in one of the Mission Impossible films. It was shot, some of it in Prague, and not my part. My part was shot in Simi Valley for
Of
Europe,
course.
but it turned out great.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to look back on some of those things that you've done and go, I'm really glad I was a part of this. This was something special, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and I've been fortunate many, many times to have that experience, and not too many stinkers. Every now and then, but very rarely now, I find myself and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to be in this show. And then I occasionally, for whatever reason, I'm like, oh, I don't want to be seen. So I will, like, unlike the typical actor, I will find ways to hide behind, behind things if I can, kind of scoot behind another actor just slightly and sort of
Right.
drift into the background. You can't do it completely. And eventually, the director goes, "Could you put it? We need to see you, Jim."
Right. Yeah.
But most of the time, I'm very pleased, and I've been part of some great projects like Apollo 13 and The Grinch, and the Big Door Prize, which I'm very happy to be in.
That's fantastic. And of course, I've got the links to all your stuff in the show notes. Check out the Big Door Prize. I've got the links to the trailer in there. It's on Apple TV, the links to your YouTube as well. Before we wrap up, I have to mention this because I think it's very important and a great opportunity for people in your line of work. You have some classes that you offer.
Yeah, I've got an online course that you can purchase, which consists of a lot of videos and ebooks about how to be a working actor and keep working as an actor. I've had a career for over 35 years. I've paid attention to what I was doing. I learned a lot from my mom, Marion Ross, who we talked about before. And I put it all together into a course, and it's available at jimworkingactor.com. Jimworkingactor.com. You can find out all about it. And people are having some success with it for sure.
That's awesome. Well, that I think that's part of our responsibility to being doing something that we're loving doing and being successful at it to help show other people how to get there too, that have that same passion. Whether they have the chops to get there or not, that's a different story, and it seems to change every day what's required. But obviously you've had an incredibly successful career. You've always got 3 or 4 at least things going at the same time. So who could argue with someone who's making it work?
Yeah, I'm not trying to get in an argument with anybody,
Yeah,
just
right.
you
Yeah.
do the course or you don't.
Right, exactly. Well, Jim, it is always a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm wishing you great success with the Big Door Prize and all the other things you're doing. I'm a huge fan of yours. I really love your work. So thank you for putting out all, your daily videos, the Celebrity Fortune Cookie and all that. Highly enjoyable. I really encourage everybody to go sign up for your page, hit the little bell so you'll get the notifications, get all the links in the show notes, and I'm sure we'll see you again. Good luck with the video game.
Thanks so much. You'll know about it soon.
Excellent. Take care, my friend.
All right. You too. Thanks very much for the gracious interview, as usual.
Thank you.